invest in people in the long term, there has to be a mutual understanding.
Hustle hard. Closed mouths don't get fed. Thinking strategically, but acting like a gorilla is the kind of marketing that's small for the planet. Innovate very little. It's highly risk averse.
I try to teach this class. I'm sure you can understand that the whole concept of leadership, in essence, is void. There's no strength behind leadership unless it is put into action. It's really an action-based class. Anything that we speak about in this class should change the way you think, which should change the way you conduct yourself, which should change the way you lead. And that's kind of the point of talking about leadership. That's why people go to leadership trainings. It's not just to learn about the definitions. It's to see how what they learn they can then apply in the organization to increase value, to make the organization more effective and efficient. So that's my attempt to try to do that in this class. Is that my goal as a professor, as an applied or as a bachelor's of applied science professor, that you be able to apply some of the stuff you're learning immediately, or at least think through how you're going to apply it in the future. At the extent of altruism that those two gentlemen engaged in, and of course the fact of their altruism is ironic because they're not really being altruistic, they are being selfish. So what is power? And why are we talking about power and politics tonight? So power is defined as the potential or ability to influence decisions and control resources. So if you look at that definition of power, you should understand very quickly, just from the definition, why power is an element of leadership. It's really very difficult to speak about leadership without speaking about power. There's an interesting contrast that is fun to look into because it's pretty culturally significant. And I did some additional research on it, on what really is old power and what really is new power. And it's so here's what old power is. It's held by few, and it's guarded, it's leader driven. And an example of it would be like monarchies, traditional corporations with rigid hierarchies, exclusive clubs, or command and control management. So that's what old power is. The implication is that ordinary people have little ability to influence or change things directly. So this is thinking that you're starting off in a new organization and you certainly see things that are wrong that you need to fix, but that organization has been around for 50 years and there's people that have been working there for a very long time, that there's probably a conglomerate of old power resting in the organization. It's going to be very difficult to change anything with that old power in existence. And there's a lot of merit to that. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it's important to understand because as we talk about new power, which maybe some of you and certainly I relate to a little bit more, what we'll see is that it's one thing to say, hey, there's new power as well, but it's very naive to ignore the fact that old power exists. And so both forms of power, the old power held by a few that's concentrated at the top with executives, rulers, institutions, this kind of stuff, it exists. So let's just say it that way. So new power is created by many, and with the democratization of technology, the proliferation of social media, with the being an influencer in a sense, or being entrepreneurial in a lot of ways, and being able to build with tech and with big families and with social networks, this kind of stuff. New power has become more prevalent, and also new power has become more prevalent because the way in which organizations are ran, there's not as much of a hierarchy at the top. The hierarchies are more flat. And with these flat hierarchies come more collective decisions, consensus-based decisions. So new power is created by many, built through participation and collective energy, open and participatory. Anyone can contribute, shape, and share in it. Peer-driven, power flows horizontally through networks rather than hierarchies. Some examples would be social movements, Me Too, climate strikes, open source software, Wikipedia, crowdsourcing, innovation inside companies. And then the implication of new power, which is a big implication to understand here, is that leadership is less about controlling resources, which, by the way, leadership has a lot to do with controlling resources. But this particular frame with new power is less about controlling resources and more about mobilizing communities, which in essence would be a monstrous resource if you can mobilize a community of people. So this is empowering teams and encouraging shared ownership. So that's old power versus new power. I thought that was a fascinating start to this. And I went ahead and did a little bit of historical context around this because it's just interesting to me. So hopefully, please bear with me as we talk about this. So power has been around. Thankfully, the Greeks and Greeks were philosophers in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that came out of ancient Greece, and one of them was politics. And what it used to be called is polis, and polis really was something like a city-state, a governing collective life. So we together are the power of politics. We govern together in a city-state. And that's where politics came out. It's just this word polis is where it came from. So Aristotle, which was one of the first what would be philosophers to sort of speak about power and humans and all this kind of stuff, so basically said humans are zon politikon. These are political animals. Kind of hard to be referred to as an animal, but this is what this philosopher Aristotle says, and it's fulfilled only in community. So the fact that we live in community, this is a big takeaway. Maybe most of you agree. Social science definitely says so, that humans are not meant to live alone. They're meant to live in community together with other people. And being isolated for an extended period of time is not a good thing. It's actually considered a form of torture for those that are in the prison system. And isolation is just one of the worst forms of torture that you can bear, especially for extended periods of time. So if we all agree that being together is how humans are meant to live, then if you think about living together in community, inherently we have to learn how to politic in a sense. So this is kind of getting into the purpose of why this is so important. So the purpose of politics is about justice, common good, and ordering life together. So we're going to live together. We're social creatures in a sense. And in order to live together, we have to have a common good. We have to have order to live together. So politics and power are not optional. This is a big thing. This is why it's in the text. This is why we're talking about it today. They are part of human social existence. Powerful concept. There's a man named Thomas Aquinas. There's a school called St. Thomas here in Miami. And the school was really founded based on the teachings and the premise of a theologian named Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas was big into this whole concept of doing a civic duty. And another reason why I'm passionate about this subject is because sometimes people want to claim virtue in a sense. They want to claim that, or I'll just, this isn't my, it sounds too much like my opinion when I say this, but when people tend to claim virtue without substance, meaning they don't take on responsibility and they speak words without walking them out. Let's put it that way. They are not engaging in the act of civil service, in the act of politics in order to do common good. So Thomas Aquinas says political life is part of God's natural law. Humans are social and rational creatures. Civic duties, obeying just laws, serving community are moral obligations, not just like things that we should maybe do if we want to. They're obligations. And the purpose of law is to lead man to virtue, not by constraint, but by habituation, meaning this is what we do because of what we do. We do it all the time. We live together in peace and harmony, and there needs to be a political structure embedded in that harmony with rules and regulations and budget control and resource allocation in order to keep the harmony. So power is legitimate only if it serves justice and the common good. That's a big phrase right there. There is power that is self-serving and does not serve the common good. So when you think about that kind of power, and we'll talk about that in this chapter, and we just came off of ethics, this is what gives politics and power the wrong vibe, the wrong name. Power isn't the ultimate thing. It's, responsibility is a little bit is higher up than power. Power is, it comes down from responsibility. I take responsibility, therefore I need power in order to gather resources to fulfill my responsibilities is a better way to look at it. So otherwise it becomes tyranny, and we don't want that. So Augustine is another, I'd say, theologian along with Aquinas, and they both say power itself is morally neutral. It becomes good or evil depending on how it is used. So good. Power itself is morally neutral. It becomes good or evil depending on how it is used. And so now we're saying, okay, thank you, Professor Kershner, for bringing us through that importance of power and relevance of power and human species and all that kind of stuff. So how does this apply to me and my organization? So we're done with that whole, philosophical conversation. We're going to get to the tactics of it sooner rather than later. And so the governing, so I don't get it confused. Politics at a national level, at a city level, all this kind of stuff is important. Where elections, laws, diplomacy, distribution of resources is great. But what we're going to be talking about in this class is micropolitics within organizations, promotions, resource allocations, alliances, influence within companies. In the definition of leadership, it says leadership is a process of influencing others to achieve organizational goals. So if that's true, then if power and power within organizations means that I can influence people better or easier, whatever that is, we should learn how to recognize and attain power so that we can influence people to attain the goals that we hopefully have been a part of setting in an ethical manner. So it's natural to do this. So modern insight organizations are political entities too. That's a big deal. And this is when I listen to there's 2 different chapters I listened to in this lecture series recently. And obviously with the book and some other aspects of my learning in order to disseminate the knowledge and teach it to you all, all of the authors have made this claim. They claim I'm teaching from the fact that organizations are political entities. So being in an organization, being in a company, being in a small team, it's a political entity. And leaders who say, I don't do politics are naive. Ignoring politics surrenders influence. And not only does it surrender influence, what it does is it potentially allows a void in politics or power to then be the power or the political acts of somebody else who is not the right person will, because of the void that you've left or somebody else has left, have now gotten into the hands of the wrong person. So that power has now been given to somebody else. So I love the phrase that my life coach said to me one time, said, if not you, then who? Meaning I was thinking about leaving my father's organization because it was too stressful, it was too much, and I wanted him to buy my shares and I just wanted to be done. And there was multiple times throughout working with my father that this is what I wanted to do because it was just too much happening and it was a hard burden to bear. And then thank God I went to my life coach and leadership coach over the course of a couple of years. And she's had a profound influence in my life. And as I would walk through these conversations with her, she wouldn't give me answers. She would just ask me questions. And she'd talk about my values. And my values are faith, family, leadership, and strength. And she'd ask about some of my goals. And my goals were to, get married and have kids and be financially independent and secure and be able to share with others and grow in righteous influence and this kind of stuff. And so she'd help me walk through that. And then she made me realize on my own that the right thing to do was to stay in the position I was in, because that position and that place I was in allowed me to accomplish all my goals and it fulfilled my values. It's a big deal. So it allowed me to do both. So in that sense, she said to me, Claude, if you were to leave, who would take your spot? Like somebody else in the organization, could they do what you do? And I said, well, not really. Could your father do what you do? I said, I don't think that would be good for the company. It wouldn't be good for the collective. So she said, if not you, then who? And so that's what I'm saying to all of you tonight in your leadership positions, in your companies, in your social circles. If not you, then who? Be that person that steps into that void and takes on those leadership roles so that you can have a righteous influence on your team and understand the political nature of those areas. So the takeaway is understanding power in politics is essential to leadership. The question is not if you engage in politics, but how you do so, ethically or selfishly. Those are the questions. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah. All right. So here is if I just went through what I went through and you're somewhat convinced, like, hey, okay, Professor Kershner, politics and power and leadership, they sort of go hand in hand. I should understand about it. I should understand. I should talk about it. I should learn more about it. The next question should be, okay, what are the sources of power? Like, where if I was going to go and try to use political tactics to try to get some power, and by the way, you don't need political tactics to get power. Merit works as well, but politics, in a sense, is achieving power without merit and without luck. So it's political tactics, which aren't necessarily merit. It's not like good work or skills. It's political skills that people give you certain things because of your interpersonal relationships with them, and therefore, obviously, you attain power. So you should say, Professor Kershner, where do I go and get this stuff? And the 6 different sources of power is what we're going to be talking about probably for the next 45 minutes or so. And so I sent you this Word document that kind of lists what we're going to be doing, but I will open it now and I'll read it. So very simple. I mean, just imagine that what's going to happen here is that you're going to be the professors, the teachers. You're going to do my job, and I thank you for that. And you're going to do great at it as well. And you're going to get one of these sources of power. They are power stemming from ownership is one source of power. Power stemming from dependencies is another source of power. Power derived from capitalizing on opportunity. Power stemming from managing critical problems. Power stemming from being close to power, and power and self-serving behavior. So these are, I mean, one of these is not great. I mean, some of them can all be spun as evil in a sense. But what I'm trying to get you to see is these acts of trying to get this power. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to research all of these sources of power. So your team's going to get together. You're going to research and talk about the science behind these sources of power. Just the one. You can watch a video. You could do some ChatGPT or AI, try to understand it from different angles. Then I want you to come up with a workplace examples where this type of power shows up. So this power is all around us all the time, undeniable. And so I want you to give some examples in the workplace where this type of power shows up. This, people wielding this source of power or trying to gain this source of power in a sense. And then so with the group, when we come back together, I want you to share why it matters for leadership, why this particular source of power is something that we should know, that we should understand the source and see it in action. So from a practical perspective, I teach entrepreneurship from the premise of empowerment, meaning that's where I start, is that entrepreneurship is empowerment. And one of the reasons why is when you start a new venture, when you create a new venture, you have the autonomy to shape what that venture looks like and the power to work with the people that you want to work with and work with the customers that you want to work with as well. So ultimately, to be entrepreneurial is an ultimate form of power through ownership. And our system of capitalism allows people to do that. It's a powerful source of power. And really it doesn't, if you know a business owner, especially business owners that might be working from a place of necessity, it's not like they're corrupt, but they are empowered. So that's a good way to think about it. By the way, Elon Musk, it would be a good example of somebody completely at the other end of the spectrum. It'd be a good example of somebody who understands power through ownership. He owns, I'm trying to find exactly how much, about a little bit less than 20% of some of these different companies, still billions of dollars, in Tesla. So it's not common for the founder, especially as a company gets to the size that it's at, to own such a large stake in the business. But what that means is that he still has a large amount of voting rights and shares in order to control the board of directors and control the future trajectory of the company. He could also sell a bunch of his shares at some point in the future in order to provide additional capital for the company. And people know that. So he has ownership power just by the fact that he owns 20% of one of the largest companies traded on the market today. So because he understands the power of ownership, he doesn't want to release those shares because he wants to retain that power. So nice job, group one. Group two, at this company X, Twitter, Musk simply bought the company outright. So he owns 100% of that company. So that's the purest form of ownership power. No board, no outside shareholders, full control. Full control of Twitter, 40% stake in SpaceX, and 20% stake in Tesla. Well done. It may come off as someone could abuse this, obviously, if somebody's dependent on them. But this is one that I want to really lean into as one that you can start working on right now. It's as simple as this. If you're in a work environment, our goal, maybe for some of us, should be to reduce our dependence on others and just acknowledge that you're dependent on maybe your boss or certain coworkers in attempt to reduce that dependence. Like what do they have or what do they have over you that you're dependent upon? And so that's why it's really good to become fiscally independent, meaning you don't need a job, but you have a, say, 3 to 6 months saved up and you're not in debt, makes you in a much better position at work negotiating for your own behalf. So you're not dependent on the job or your boss. I think that's really important to understand. And then also, so you're reducing your dependence on others and you're increasing other people's dependence on you. That doesn't mean that you're manipulating them. It means you're a linchpin. It means you're really good at what you do. You specialize in certain things. You gather information. You articulate yourself well. You are likable. That those characteristics and that specialization and controlling certain kinds of resources that you know the most about, then people become dependent on you. I think about let's just say you're a mechanic, a car mechanic, and you know that three people they've been coming to you to fix your car for years. Nobody else knows their car like you do. And so therefore, when something's wrong with their car, they're dependent on you. And that means they're going to keep coming back and giving you business. This is a good thing. And some of the things that I advocate for certain organizations do, little things, is make sure that you build a report on your customers. And so that your customers, you assure them that you know a lot about them. So in the pool service business, we would go out to customers' houses and we label equipment. We label the equipment with a little sticker that says pump, filter, heater, motor, inflow, outflow, all that kind of stuff. And on that sticker, we would put a number. If anything's wrong with this equipment on the heater or whatever, please call this number. So we're automatically putting our information on there. And in addition to that, every quarter we'd go out and do what was called a preventative maintenance check. And in the preventative maintenance check, we would give them information that we have about their account, how often we've serviced them, what equipment they have, how old their equipment is, when it was last inspected, the condition of their equipment, who their technician is, what their chemistry report of their pool is, certain trends that have been happening. We gather this information, we summarize it, and send it out to our customers. What does that tell our customer? Well, it tells our customer that we know a darn lot about their pool. So if our tech goes out to the pool and does something crazy, and say just I don't know, throws a bunch of dirt in the pool and leaves, and so then the customer is obviously very angry at that. But the customer is still going to keep us, hopefully, because they know that we know a lot about their pool. They're sort of dependent on our ability to come out there and take care of the pool because we understand their asset. And of course, we would probably give them a new technician, which is fine. But if we didn't establish that dependence, then they could very well just fire us and move on because we didn't establish that dependence. So I hope you can see how this is a critical one to understand. Is reducing your dependence on others and increasing other people's dependence on you is a clear, if done ethically, posturing for power. Go ahead. A great example. And I thank you for bringing it up because what it tells you is that when other people are dependent on you, how you treat them really matters because one day that person might not be dependent on you and you might be dependent on them. So your ability to use your power in a righteous manner in those times where you train and you help and you guide and you don't hoard your information and domineer over people. Instead, you're a giver and you're a giver. And then eventually what you want the people that are dependent on you want them to grow out of that dependence, just like children. And you want them to eventually one day take care of you. I mean, that's what kids do, right? They're very dependent on us. And then one day when we get old, hopefully they come and change my diapers. Yes, I said it. That's important. Okay. So thank you for the second group to go. Nice job. And group number 3. And I love what everybody said. And where we have to make sure we note is that, and I put it in the chat, but I'd love to say it. If we stay ready, we don't have to get ready. And it's not about volunteering for things that are completely outside of the norm and bringing in projects to an organization that don't even fit what the organization does, what their competencies are. It's about being prepared for potential assignments. And it means getting good sleep. It means eating healthy. It means staying healthy. It means showing up to work. It means reading on your free time. It means having the right organized desk and making sure we're learning the things that need to be learned about the organization and the policies and the procedures and familiarizing ourselves with the operation so that God forbid something was to happen to somebody, not God forbid, but if there was an opportunity that came about, you're ready for it. And that saying yes to that opportunity, even interviewing for an opportunity that you think says a lot to the leaders in that organization. There's a wonderful competency in entrepreneurship that actually has been studied at length, and it's called the competency of opportunity recognition. And to understand what it means to recognize opportunity, not everybody sees it. If you're walking down the street with an entrepreneur is looking around everywhere, and they're saying that window over there is ill lit and it needs more lighting. And if it was my store, I'd put my box over there because I believe that the customers will like that better. And when I walk in and the way that I walked into the operation, it doesn't seem like people are greeting me and there's a bottleneck here. And you're constantly thinking about ways to make certain things better so that when you go back to your own operation or when you see an opportunity, you're ready to capitalize on it. And so, I think about these shows on HGTV when these people, they have this eye for design or whatever it may be. And by the way, I don't watch HGTV, but my wife does. And it's a good example. I could watch it. Who knows? I'm not saying anything bad about it, but
Awesome.
the point is they see what could be. And they also see, hey, I don't know, this might not be the right opportunity, but when they have that vision and they understand that this house, the opportunity for this view and the opportunity for this willow tree back here and the opportunity to make this room what it is, it's actually a competency. Not everybody has that. And you can work on that. You can develop that. And in your career, if you can develop that kind of opportunity recognition and you can say yes to the right things, it's really awesome. So I'll give one concrete example. My chair, she's amazing. Her name is Lynn Argules, and she is a wonderful leader. And she is very active in the community and she's very active within the college. And she really advocates for me. She wants me to, be successful as a full-time faculty member. And in her desire to make me successful, she offers me certain opportunities that she thinks would be right for me. So let me ask the class, as a new faculty member, what should I do when my chair that cares about me and is a good leader comes to me and offers me an opportunity? Should I say yes or should I say no? Work, and even if it's, maybe something that I'm sort of, maybe I have some, I don't want to, let's just say I don't feel as confident doing certain things, but when she comes to me and she offers me an opportunity to get in front of people, to perform, to be good at what I do, saying yes is very beneficial for me in my career. Because at this point, I'm still new as a faculty member. And if I could say yes to as much as I can, I could get out in front of people, I could build credibility, then a couple of years from now, I could start saying no. And I'm not saying that. So you get the point. So make sure that you understand that in your career and on your team, if your leadership recognizes you as somebody that might be the right person to capitalize on opportunity and present you with it, it would probably be a good idea for you to say yes. So that's kind of the why, because of course we're trying to gain in leadership effectiveness, and that would be a path. Okay, thank you, group 3. Group 4, my mind immediately goes to firefighters, to military personnel, to like FEMA response teams when there's a hurricane in an area. And then also you think about even insurance companies, like in people who insurance brokers. So if something was to happen with my car or my house, God forbid, even saying it, but I would call my insurance agent who is used to dealing with people in those kind of situations and knows what to do, because that would be that would be an example. They have ultimate power. What do I do? Where do I go? My father-in-law had worked for FPL for 30 years, and if my power went out for an extended period of time, I would call him, and I'd be very keen on understanding how can you help me, sir? I mean, you've been dealing with this for a while. Not only can you maybe come over and take a look at my transform or in my switch box, but in addition to that, can you call some people that you know at FPL because they're not responding to me? Is it can you pull some strings for me? So you get the idea. The the people that I work with, I travel and I do work with a company called LDR Leadership, and most of them are ex-military. And there is a sense in me, and I have never served in the military, but and I probably know this, but they train for crisis. They're ready for it. They almost condition their stimuli and their heart rate. Their heart rate is down in situations of crisis. They're ready to step in, and because they're prepared, they understand the terms, the deal. They know how to get stuff done. They know how to move people towards action. They know how to take leadership, this kind of stuff. And these folks are absolutely like that. And while I'm on the road and I have to work with clients that they have asked me to work with, if something's wrong at all and I call, they pick up and they are straight into operations mode. They call me C4 because I'm Claude IV. They say, C4, what's up? Hey, Vern, it's Claude. I need this, this, and this. He says, okay, let me give you a call back. 5 minutes. 5 minutes calls me back. Hey, say, I got this, and this coming for you. Anything else that you need? They're just ready. And the reason why I call them is because I know I need their help, and they're the ones I go to. So my point in saying all that is, what are we training for as leaders? What are we preparing for? Do we have CPR training? Do we understand that some of these skills that we might be building up could very well be needed in critical times? Yeah, I can go on and on with examples here, and these are valuable things. So another one of those, you don't have to get ready, stay ready concepts. Oh, the last example I'll use here is information technology, IT professionals. IT professionals are becoming more and more powerful. And some of the IT professionals in these big companies are more powerful than the CEO because their infrastructure is based on their technology. And if there's a IT person that is leading the team, the technology team, and integrating technology across all the different departments and platforms within this company, and there's a major tech initiative for whatever it may be, that tech person has a ton of power because if something was to go wrong, that person would be the one that they need to come and fix it. So it's invaluable to have those skills in technology these days. And I think even if you look, it'd be fascinating to see the trend over the last 10, 15 years about the pay scale of people who are in technology versus just say managers, like general managers or operations managers, and how technology managers, that's what you call them, CTOs, are just becoming more and more compensated because of this dealing with crisis and critical problems concept. Okay, team 5. There's a scene from Moneyball, if you've seen it. And it's a funny scene because Brad Pitt, thank you, group, for going. That was good. Brad Pitt is the manager of this team, and Brad Pitt is Billy Beane, and he's the manager of the Oakland A's. And the whole premise behind Moneyball is that this guy Jonah Hill comes in with this new algorithmic tactic to try to get information so that they can pick the right players so that their team can win. And Jonah Hill's sort of a nobody in a sense. Like he hasn't been in Major League Baseball, and he just smart guy and quiet, introverted. But once Brad Pitt brings him into his partnership and starts working with him in order to develop the plan to run this team and to get these players, Jonah Hill establishes an enormous amount of power. And it's not, he doesn't use it unwisely, but the fact that he's standing next to the manager's pointing at him and asking for information, and he's confiding in Jonah Hill, and Jonah Hill is confiding in Brad Pitt, and they're working now together. All of a sudden, the person who was over here and working for a department in IT is now in a significant, more influential space because he's closer to the person who's actually making decisions. And just that proximity alone, there's a whole book called The Proximity Principle. If anybody listens to Dave Ramsey's show, the proximity principle is the proximity principle. Is you kind of want to get around the things that you want to. If you want to be a lawyer, go get around a bunch of lawyers. If you want to be a professional swimmer, go hang out at the pool and start swimming with swimmers. You know what I mean? It's just get around it. Rub off on people as they rub off on you of doing what you want to do. And so that's kind of the premise here too. Like being around people who have power, who have decision making authority, certainly would be a way to have power as well. This one can get particularly ugly, I think, in politics because sometimes it's clear the behaviors that people do, and one of them is called ingratiation. They'll compliment or fawn over people that have power, and it's so clear. I mean, it's clear for me, and it starts to get sickening when I see somebody important walks in the room and you're talking to somebody, and all of a sudden they sort of like leave your conversation and they just start gravitating towards somebody else, and they start acting different and speaking different. It's like that's too much. You know what I mean? It becomes clearly political kind of posturing and behavior. And hopefully, as a leader, even that leader in that story I just tried to articulate can see it because it's it's a neutral political tactic. It's not unethical to ingratiate somebody, but at the same time, it could be considered to be unethical depending on the environment. Okay, influence increases the closer you are to decision makers. It's not always about your title. Sometimes it's about being in the room, hearing information first, or having direct access to leaders. Okay, last one, group 6. That's such an important one. I'm happy you finished on that. I love that chart that you provided in the beginning because, in essence, it's just saying that power that goes unchecked. If you're going to be in a position of power and you don't have people holding you accountable, and I think pastors and churches should be this way. Certainly, our Constitution provides these different branches of the political structure: the executive branch, legislative branch, and the judicial branch. That they check one another, and there's not an ultimate aspect of total power, and it's designed that way. And I think when you think about it from an individual level, how can we design our lives if we have positions of power to receive feedback regularly? Like I'll use myself as the bad guy. Maybe at times I'm too harsh on, say, my students, or too harsh on expectations for people that work on my team, or maybe I'm too harsh on my kids. And I have to ask the people that are close to me. I could say, give me some feedback. How am I doing? Did you see that? Did I handle that situation well? How could I get better? And allow them to speak into our lives. I think that's I wish more leaders would realize that. I mean, maybe for some of us, I'll use a different spin here. We've been in positions of power for an extended period of time, and we know how to get stuff done. We know how to flex political muscle, to send emails, to delegate, all this kind of stuff. But eventually, those same tactics that we're using could very well come off as crass. They could come off as inauthentic, and they could come off as bad. And so how can we change those ways of doing things so that we can get better at that? And the 360-degree feedback, we talked about that in the past, is a real good one here. And so again, what got you here won't get you there. So that's what I think of when I think of these stories about power. So I have a clip to play, and then I have a decent amount of slides to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and take it from here. So I'm going to show you a quick clip. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Hidden Figures. And the background of the story really is there's a lady. This is back in the 40s or something. And we are now on this task to try to get to the moon. And there's a lot of old power happening. And there's a little bit of conflict between race, and there's a lot of social tension happening. Let's just say it that way. And this lady really is amazing at what she does. And so we'll watch the scene, and you'll see a little bit of these power moves playing out in the scene. And so if you haven't seen the movie Hidden Figures, I highly recommend it. So I'm going to play the scene. Dependency there. And so she did know that this gentleman, as she stated very clearly, you're in charge. Like, it's up to you, and you need to know that because you need to bring me in the room. And so she wasn't afraid to have that proximity to power and assert herself that way. And she saw opportunity, and she stepped up and took it. But it didn't come. She's been doing math for 20 years, probably. I mean, she prepared for this moment. It's not like she just stumbled in there unprepared. So it's a good scene. I'm happy we played it. That kind of shows all of those different dynamics working themselves out. And also what we're going to talk about now, and I'm just going to open the slide so I don't ramble on. is empowerment. And what that gentleman was able to do, Kevin Costner, is that his name? I don't know his name. I think that might be his name. What he was able to do is empower her. And that's a thing too, as a leader, is learning that. I'll say it like this, because we're going to get into empowerment. We'll spend a couple minutes talking about it. If I'm a leader and I'm a good leader, if I empower my team and my team is successful, that actually brings me more power. And it's not like I'm empowering my team so that I get more power, but it behooves a leader to empower the right people on their team so that they can be successful, so that the entire team can be successful. So therefore, the leader is successful. So there we go. Voila, empowerment. Giving power to others should be the natural course of events. That if one attains power, for what, gives it to other people so that they can be empowered, so that they can perform, so that the team performs, so that the organization performs. Empowerment of others is what should happen if one has power themselves. And of course, you have to make sure you're empowering the right person. You don't want to empower the wrong people. That would be a tragic flaw. But I want to state, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I want to get back to it because we talked about this in the beginning of the course. And we talked about these position power and personal power. And so position power is formal authority that you have within an organization that is really bestowed upon you because of a position. So that's legitimate power, the lawful right to make a decision and expect compliance because you have a title of sorts. Reward powers, you can actually give people a promotion. You can give them a pat on the back. You could give them, and they'll like that. And you can give them a raise or a bonus, and that's really helpful. That's reward power. Coercive powers, you could punish somebody. That if somebody doesn't comply, you have the power to fire them, to demote them, to give them a demerit, whatever that looks like. And then, of course, personal power, which we can all work on. This is leading when you're not in charge. This is building relationships with other people as referent power, being likable. Think of charisma when we talked about that. Expert power is what you just witnessed in that movie. I mean, she wasn't, she was certainly an expert in math and calculus and physics and all this kind of stuff. And so she had power because of her expertise. And then also because of her ability to build relationships. So she certainly was able to leverage her personal power in that scene. And then prestige power, I don't usually use this as one of the power factors. It's not included in all the science, so it's somewhat debatable in the science. But prestige power, just because it's on this slide, it stems from a person's status and reputation. So somebody could very well have, I guess it's relevant because if you have, say, I don't ever look at people's social media because to me it's like whatever, and face to face is kind of what I want. But if I found out that this person had, 16 million people following them on their YouTube channel or something like that, it would change our personal dynamics because I would think, wow, this person is prestigious in a way. And so there is an element of that. So again, I'll use that as an example that this person is somebody. And so that is personal power. You can have a last name, a family, a reputation. And so there's like if you're related to a president or somebody really famous and rich, that's sort of a prestige element too. Okay, so I'm going to go probably 20 minutes and then I'll let you guys go, but I want to make sure I cover this content. Empowerment is vital. One who has power to empower others is important. Empowerment is the basic component of shared or distributed leadership. As a team member receives more power, they can accomplish more. They become more productive. So giving people power is really what we're supposed to do. So empowerment is passing decision-making authority, not just any kind of thing, but decision-making authority and responsibility for managers to group members. 5 noteworthy components. I'm going to get out of that for a second. I'm going to show you this article that I wrote. The Dr. Claude Kershner Show publications right here. And I'll just briefly give you a real life example. So I went to Jimmy John's for a couple months and I was going to Jimmy John's because I enjoyed their club tunas. And I walk into Jimmy John's and they have a system. The system is very clear. As you can see here, you got the menu, you order what you want to order. They only have mayonnaise and mustard and olive oil, and that's pretty much it. The bags of chips are way too expensive and it's a combo, it's not a combo. They put the same exact amount of meat on it. They put the other person. It's very systematic. It's very standardized and it's efficient. And they need to have it that way because the sandwiches there are relatively cost efficient. They're like 10, 11 bucks, which is reasonably cheap nowadays. And so the person behind the counter is not empowered to give me free food, to change the menu, to let me know if I'm a first time guest that they can, I don't know, give me a birthday present or something like that. They're not empowered to do much out of the normal. They're not empowered to be customer service driven. And so as opposed to, I compare it, here's a Jimmy John sandwich, to a Subway place I went to for the first time, a sub place, I call them Hoagies in Philadelphia, called Broadway Subs. And when I walked into Broadway Subs, it was a totally different experience. And I was looking for a good sub place. I was kind of getting sick of Jimmy John's. I saw this place, Broadway Subs, which is close to the Homestead campus. I drove there. It was a little bit further than Jimmy John's, sort of away from my house, but I went there anyways. As soon as I walked in the door, I was greeted by a lady that emphatically said hello to me. Like, it wasn't one of those haphazard hellos, which they do at Jimmy John's, sort of, they're looking down, like, hey, welcome to Jimmy John's. And it's just flat and unauthentic. But this lady said, hello, thank you for being here. And I was like, hi. And then everybody in the kitchen staff behind them, this area over here, they kind of looked up and said hello as well. And it was a genuine, they didn't say hello, but they sort of gave me a glance and like a half-hearted smile. And it felt comforting. And so then when I went to the countertop and I ordered, I got a Philadelphia cheesesteak. I explained to her, I was kind of caught off guard because I'd never been there before. And I said to the lady when I got up there, I said, I've never been here before. And she goes, we got a first time guest. And she turned around and everybody sort of clapped it up for me. And she said, okay, listen, let me walk you through this menu. And I said, well, I'm from Philadelphia. And, I'm obviously cheesesteaks in Philadelphia are important. She goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're not in Philadelphia. You're in Miami. This is how we do it in Miami. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So her tune was real. It was authentic. And then she went ahead and I told her I didn't want fries and I didn't want to drink. But because it was my first time, she gave me free fries. She said, you have to try the fries. Not only do you get the fries, but you're going to get the special sauce as well. And so I went to my table, they cleaned off my table. It was just a wonderful experience. But my point in telling this story is that that lady behind the counter was empowered to give me a unique first time guest experience. And she was empowered to take a handful of French fries, which probably cost them 20 cents, and put them on my plate and say, these are on us. And also, I got a bottle of water and she gave me that on the house as well. It was a very expensive cheesesteak, but she was empowered to make those decisions on behalf of ownership. She could very well be the owner for all I know. But the point is, it was noticeable to see a staff member so empowered. And I could sense that their kitchen staff was probably equally empowered. So again, this is just an example of what I guess the power of empowering staff members to make decisions. Yet I go back to Jimmy John's for a second. Jimmy John's is a wonderful establishment. They're very successful because they operate on that efficiency model. If you empower the folks at Jimmy John's to start giving away free chips, next thing you know, there's going to be $1 million of chips given away every day, and they can't afford it. So it's very difficult to really regulate and govern when you start empowering people to make sure that's done well. And so that's a real monster that I just opened up there. And it's a clear difference of walking into a place and feeling an establishment where people are not empowered versus feeling an establishment where people are empowered, the right kinds of people.
Correct.
So meaning, yeah. And so let's get past this slide. So here's some ways that we can empower other people. And so effective empowerment means you're creating more meaning in work, you're creating competence, you're creating self-efficacy. We'll talk about that term, self-determination, impact, and an internal commitment. That's effective empowerment. And some of the things we can do as leaders to empower other people, I'm on this green box now, is foster initiative and responsibility. What does it mean, foster initiative and responsibility? I mean, first of all, you walk it out, you live it as an example, and you have a sense of urgency about you, and you expect that from others. It's pretty straightforward. Link work activities to organizational goals. You don't do things just because we feel like doing them. They're actually a part of who we are here as an organization. So I'm not asking you to go up and make this presentation in class because I'm just don't have anything else for you to do and I'm trying to waste my time as a professor. No, I'm actually thinking that this is going to help you practice your leadership skills. You're going to get in a team, you're going to work on different roles. One person's going to put together a PowerPoint, and then you're going to figure out how you're going to present it. And when you present it, this is leadership. So there's more intention behind getting you to present things. And I'm linking the activities that you do to the goals of you becoming better leaders and to the goals of this class and the competencies. Provide ample information. That's usually something I'm not great at, but what we have to get good at it is when people okay, so congratulations. I see Aiden on the screen. Congratulations, Aiden. You're now officially the CFO of company Claude. And you're like, okay, thank you. And the next thing you're going to say is like, where is company Claude located? And where's the financial information and how do I access my computer? Like there's all sorts of things that thank you for empowering me. I'm so grateful, but I need more information. I need stuff from you beyond just you empowering me. So allow group members to choose methods, encourage self-leadership, continue to lead. It's funny. How is that even one there? I mean, it's frank. It's important because if I'm empowering others, but I'm not doing anything myself, and all I'm doing is just empowering people to do the work, and I'm not leading, and so I delegate. Essentially, delegation and empowerment are different. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's certain things that I still have to do that I can't empower other people to do. The vision casting, the executive budgeting, the team building, this kind of stuff still needs to be within my responsibility. So don't just go around and be like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. You have to do more. Take into account cultural differences. That's a big one. One of the examples I give in the book is that in India, the empowerment is actually shunned, meaning if you're a leader and you start empowering other people, that you actually lose respect because they say, no, you're the leader. You're supposed to do this stuff. Like empowering me would actually mean that you're not competent enough to do it yourself. So in certain cultures, empowering people isn't necessarily the right thing to do. And so that's just something to consider. Establish limits to empowerment, practice an optimal amount of empowerment. There's just some tactics for you. Foster initiative and responsibility. We just did all these. All group, continue to lead, take action, delegation. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the difference between empowerment and delegation. Empowerment is really just this general moral value-based, hey, I want to uplift you and encourage you, and I want you to be successful, and I want you to take initiative, I want you to make decisions. That's great. Delegation is very task-based, very specific. And by the way, you can delegate authority. Delegating authority is a very important thing. If your job, Christian, is to go and create an event, and I empower you to create the best event ever, but you don't have any authority to get the people that you need for the event to participate with you. Like let's say you need IT people and you need the cleanup crew and you need the people to set up the chairs and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know that you're the leader, and nor do they take direction from you. So what do I need to do? Well, not only do I need to give you I need to empower you to put on a great event, but I also need to assign you formal authority over those people. Meaning I go to them and I say, hey, listen, Christian's putting on an event and he's doing it on behalf of our organization, I need you to listen to what he has to say, and I need you to do what he tells you to do. Like that's giving Christian authority to execute on his empowerment. I'm empowering him, but I'm also delegating authority. I think that's very important for everybody to understand, is that delegating authority is going to be something you have to do as well, as opposed to just talking people up and giving them autonomy. It's more than that. Without effective delegation, effective leadership and management cannot take place. This is so good. Leaders are not task specialists anymore. Congratulations, you've been promoted. You no longer get to do the fun stuff that you love to do. Why? Because you're generalists. And your duty is to get good at what we're talking about today. It's to get good at understanding power. It's to get good at understanding delegation. It's to get good at understanding empowerment. It's to get good at understanding interpersonal skills. And it's to delegate effectively so that things can happen. This is important to understand, is that now your new skill is delegation. And without effective delegation, leadership cannot take place, leadership and management. So narrower. Delegation is narrower than empowerment because it deals with a specific task. Talked about that. Delegation involves more checking on subordinates than does empowerment. Motivational, because delegation gives group members a chance to develop their skills and demonstrate their competence. Avoid delegating a task that should be a leader's responsibility, such as creating a vision. We talked about that. Delegate effective when a person knows. Delegation is effective when a person knows amount of accountability of delegated task. It's not typed very well. All right, so we've done power, and we understand power. We understand sources of power, the formal power too, and the informal power, which is the power assigned by the organization versus power that you possess as a person. And there's 6 different types of sources of power. And so then we talked about empowering others, which is important. So now we're moving to organizational politics. So now that we understand power, how do we effectively use power in a political fashion? And how do we gain power, in a sense, by using political skills? Well, this is where we're going to start. By the way, the next chapter really talks about specific leadership influence tactics, which is sort of a continuation of organizational politics. So organizational politics is informal approaches to gaining power through means other than merit or luck. Politics are played to achieve power, either directly or indirectly. Leaders need political skill to build alliances and gain resources. Leader political support, political acts and influential behaviors performed by leaders to provide followers with valuable resources to advance individual, group, or organizational objectives. So these PowerPoints aren't great. I wish I had a chance to change them a little bit. But what does it mean, leader political support? What it means is that your team needs you to be political. Your team needs you to gain resources. Your team needs you to be likable. So I mentioned as an example, my chair, Lynn. If Lynn wasn't who she is, meaning Lynn is amazing, she's good at what she does, she cares about people, she has a great reputation, she works hard, and so all this kind of stuff. If she didn't do that and she was my leader, I would be the unfortunate, I would not be benefiting. My career would be much harder because my leader didn't do what they needed to do in order to gain power, influence, and resources so that they can support me. So if that makes any sense, it's sort of our duty to use political tactics so that we can help the people on our team. And so it's like, let's look at it this way. People use this terminology, I'll fall on the sword for you. And of course we want leaders to do that. But what does that really look like in action? It means a leader will walk into the boss's office, the CEO's office, I don't care who it is, and fight for you and say, I need this for my team member. And here's why. Here's my case. Let me provide my case. And if something was to go wrong on your team, the leader says, do not go to my team. It's on me. I'm the leader of the team. It's on me. Come to me. I want to buffer my team members from any kind of executive negativity, and I take responsibility for it. That's political. And that's what we want our leaders to do, is to fight for us, but also guard us when we fail, because we're going to fail and things won't go right. And we want them to fall on the sword, in a sense, so that we feel supported and we're not afraid to fail again, because we know our leaders got our back, put it that way. And that's political. So pyramid-shaped organizational structure is really less power at the top. And a lot of times when I designed an organizational structure for my organization, this is later in my leadership career, I actually put myself at the bottom, similar to that guy from the Sporting Goods, Ed Stack. And it's because I embraced this servant leadership concept. And I really did put the people on the front line that were out there in the field every day at the top, because our job as administrators is really to support them. And so there's a lot more of this. That's an extreme. It's like an upside down triangle. But this is now more of a pyramid concept. So only so much power is available to distribute among people who want more power. So pyramid-shaped organizational structure, a pyramid concentrates power at the top. So actually, I'm sorry, I was thinking about a diamond shape. A pyramid would be like a triangle, obviously a pyramid pointing up, where all of the power is residing at the top of the pyramid. So this would be the antithesis of what I just said in sharing power. It is the inverse of what would be the servant leader upside down pyramid. So power usually resides at the top of the organization in such hierarchical organizations. Not all organizations are like that. Gosh, people, I'll make this comment because it's somewhat distracting. You guys like drop out of Zoom and you fall out of the class somehow, and then people keep getting into the waiting room and I have to keep letting you in. It's like 10 times tonight. People are getting out, but I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if it's me or if it's Zoom or if it's your personal cell phone, but if it's something that's happening on my side, please let me know so I can fix it. Anyway, subjective standards of performance. Okay, so this is an important one. When we're in an organization and we don't know exactly what we're supposed to do in order to be successful, and that when we're evaluated based on performance, it's not clear, it's not rational. Okay, if you're here for 2 years and you complete 6 assignments and you don't take too many vacation days, you get a raise. Oh, that's good. Like I just have to do these 3 things and then I get a raise. If that's not clear and you go in for your performance review and your boss kind of sits back in your chair and goes, well, I kind of like you, but some days I don't like you, and I don't really see you a lot around the office, so I don't think I'm going to give you a raise. That is called a subjective standard of performance, and when that happens, I'm going to be very clear. When that's in place, more political action will happen because people will need to politic because they're trying to subjectively get into the good graces of somebody as opposed to from a merit perspective get into the good graces of somebody. So if your organization doesn't have a lot of clarity there around what performance looks like and the standards of performance, you're going to see additional political behavior within your team. It's a good one to understand. And then environmental uncertainty and turbulence. When people operate in an unstable and unpredictable environment, they tend to behave more politically. I'm sure you can understand why. If things are ambiguous and things are uncertain, their natural tendency is to cozy up against other people and to gossip or to do the interpersonal skill stuff because they're left with nothing else. Even if they work really hard and even if they follow the rules, we still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So let me build my coalitions and get around the people that I want to get around and sort of lock arms and go our way. I know this thought came into my mind, like these zombie apocalypse movies, really highly uncertain. But what they do is they yoke up with certain neighbors. And so when other people come into their territory and want to, hang out in their house and they don't have enough resources, they say, no, you can't be here. So they act more political when there's uncertainty, turbulence, because there's zombies out there. Hopefully that analogy was helpful. Emotional insecurity. Some people resort to political maneuvers to ingratiate themselves with superiors because they lack confidence in their own talents and skills. Big one. It's for a leader who falls victim to somebody else's ingratiating tactics and emotional insecurity, they themselves could be called emotionally insecure and naive. But at the same time, if you're resorting to these ingratiating tactics and this flattery, if you would, because you are not confident, then just check yourself. And this is one of those things where the people in your life should tell you that, hey, you're treating that person differently than you're treating that person. And how come instead of just doing the work, how come you're constantly complaining to people about doing the work and hoping that they give you an extension on the deadline? Why don't you just do the work? And yeah, you're really nice to him, and yeah, you've asked him 4 times, and he's given you 3 extensions. Don't you think you're sort of abusing his good graces? And oh well, he likes me. Come on, like let's try to not be emotionally insecure and resort to these political tactics because of emotional insecurity. Obviously, this takes place, and this is something just a variable that happens in the work environment. So we know that people resort to more political behaviors when they're emotionally insecure, and maybe you see it yourself. Maybe I do it as well, and certainly, maybe people around you happen. So this is a tough one, and this is one where Tupac Shakur, who was one of my favorite rappers when I was in my teenage years, again, I'm vulnerable with you all. He had a song, and at the beginning of the song, he gives this Machiavellianist, Illuminati, all through your body. So this term Machiavelli, it has been in my mind for a long time, and when I started learning about what it means to be Machiavellian, it turns out to be a really really bad thing. And there's one of the Netflix series that first came out, Kevin Spacey, and he's a politician and he ends up being the president. He is a true Machiavellian in this series. He's so evil and so corrupt, but he's so good at it. And it's really tough because they understand the use of power and they crave power for their own good, but they will manipulate people, they will love people and care for people and serve people until they get what they want and then drop them like nothing you wouldn't even believe because you've given the person what they want and then they're moving on to the next person, the next thing. And they've already known that they're going to do this the whole time. And it's almost like they'll set somebody up to fall into the spider web. And then when you fall into the spider web, you're stuck in the web and you can't do anything about it. And even if you try to tell people how horrible they are, they don't believe you because their Machiavellian tendencies are so strong. So this exists, and some people engage in political behavior because they want to manipulate others, sometimes for their own personal advantage. That's what being a Machiavellian is to an extreme. So encouraging admiration from subordinates, managers, as well as other workers send out subtle signals that they want to be praised, such as smiling after receiving a compliment and frowning when receiving negative feedback. So I'm going to go to more, we talked about ethics, right? I'm going to go to more what would be tactical approaches aimed at gaining power. And then we'll sort of close on this because there's just a couple more slides to go. But okay, thank you so much, Claude, for explaining power. Thank you so much for putting us into these groups. Thank you for talking about empowerment and how important empowerment is. Thank you for walking us a little bit around organizational politics. What does politics mean? Does it happen in an organization? Give me some examples, this kind of stuff. Now I'm telling you that these are some things you can do tomorrow and for the rest of your career to gain additional power in your work environment. develop power contacts. There's important people that if you stay in touch with them that do have access to certain things, this is important. I work in consulting. Sometimes in consulting, I do not have the information. For instance, there's an ESOP, which is an employee buyback agreement. So an organization sold a large amount of their shares to the employees. It's an amazing structure. It's really cool. But I haven't really dealt with those companies in the past. So somebody comes to me and say, hey, I have an ESOP. I need you to come in and consult with me. I don't say no to that. I say, absolutely, I'll come and meet with you. And I bring the specialists that I've known for a long time with me to the meeting because they're the ESOP specialists. And when I sit next to them, I facilitate a conversation, I listen, and we're on the same team and we can help that client together. So again, this is an example of if you have a power contact, like a really good dentist, a really good air conditioning person, and go on and on. These are ways that we can stay in touch with these people, reach out to them, encourage them, have a compelling vision. That's a big one. I one day will influence as many people as possible through edification of business knowledge. And when I talk about influencing many people as possible, I want to build programs, grassroots programs in cities that suffer from disadvantage. And I want to have those businesses grow and be empowered and be able to have families and communities foster. I want to make it happen. I'm starting to make it happen. I believe it can happen. And I want to continue trying to, do these kinds of things. So again, that was my attempt at having some kind of compelling vision that could possibly get other people to come along with me in my journey. Said, and the people that you might be able to influence positively based on your connection with her. And that's how I would frame it, is really, you're not doing it selfishly, you're doing it so that you can attain additional power and resources eventually at some point in your career, so that you can serve others, so you can help your team, and so you can, just like you're in your position now, 5 years from now, you're going to be the board of directors, you're going to be the CEO of some company or in some managerial position, and you can do it for somebody else. That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Control
Professor.
vital information is important. Do what the political environment demands. This is an interesting one. When we're in an organization and there's a culture, and the political environment says that this is sort of what we do here and how we operate and how we treat each other, whatever that means. If you operate counter that culture and counter that political environment, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I am saying that what's going to happen is it might be a little bit more difficult for you. So, all right, you go to a job and you see that these people in this new job, they're not doing things right? You just know they're not doing things right. It probably doesn't behoove you to tell them that on the first day. It probably doesn't even behoove you to tell them that in the first week. You should probably build some relationships first, gain some trust, and tactfully, politically maneuver your way into convincing them that they're doing it wrong and that you might be able to help them do it right. Or that you ask them questions where they figure it out themselves that they're doing it wrong and that they choose to do it differently. So the point is, if you disrupt the culture, if you disrupt the political environment, that would be a political blunder in a way, depending. But remember that everyone expects to be paid back. This is a tough one that some people can't necessarily. I've said this in boardrooms and I've said this in other talks, and I get a lot of pushback here because it says, oh, well, reciprocity, I do something for someone and I don't expect them to do anything in return. And yes, of course, altruism, serve others, I totally understand. But in reality, there are certain things that you can do for other people, and you can have some expectation that someday they're going to do something for you. So I'll give you an example. My neighbor has had their power go out, and their power was out for a decent amount of time, and they needed to, my father-in-law wasn't available to help them, but they needed to connect their power to our house, to our meter. And so FPL came out and they could have done this crazy thing to try to connect it to the transformer, which was way far away. But they decided that they were going to try to see if they can ask me if they can connect it to my house. And for 14 days, more like 10 days, I had this obstruction in my driveway, and they're like sucking energy from my infrastructure. And there's certain parts about it, I'm like, man, I got a family too. If my power goes out, I'm be kind of upset about that. So there's a part of me that's like, man, it's tough. But I said, yes, obviously they're my neighbor. So that one day, when my power goes out, or if it goes out, I would feel perfectly dignified going over to their house and saying, hey, neighbor, do you mind if I, and that's okay. That's my point, is it's understood. It's mutually acceptable to, get paid back for certain advantages and things you give other people. So one of the things that psychologists that I respect says often is that if you move into a new place, you're trying to develop some relationships. One of the best things you can do is go ask somebody for something small, like some eggs. Do you have any extra eggs? I don't have any eggs in my house. And what they'll do likely is, of course I have some eggs. And they will graciously give you some eggs because they're eggs. They hardly ever eat eggs, and they're in the refrigerator, and they want to give them away. And what a wonderful thing to be able to give my neighbor some eggs. So they leave that interaction. They feel like they're, Mother Teresa, because they gave their neighbor some eggs. So you did them a favor in giving them some eggs, or allowing them to give you some eggs. So the point is now, when they need something, that you're going to say yes to that. And so it starts to develop that back and forth sharing of resources just because you ask them for a simple favor. Next thing you know, they're coming over and saying, hey, do you mind if my kids, swing on your swing? It's like, of course you can swing on my swing. And then as soon as you say yes to that, then it's like, boom, the reciprocity is open, like back and forth all the time. Sometimes we have to set boundaries. Fences make for good neighbors. Like, there has to be rules, but at the same time, the point is that that reciprocal action is a good thing. Be politically correct. Avoid terms that offend people. Be the first to accept reasonable changes. Inquire about improving your performance. Develop positive psychological capital. There's a gentleman in this class, I won't say his name, but he reached out to me and said, I'd like to meet with you. And I want to talk about my performance in class. I want to check in. How am I doing? Like, is there any advice you can give me? That kind of stuff. That is impressive. And that, to me, God forbid, at the end of the semester, there's a discrepancy where it's like, he's got a 90.1. And maybe if I gave him a participation grade that was here versus here, I probably shouldn't say that. But because of his effort and because of his political nature and because he's trying and caring and getting in front of people and inquiring about his performance, and just in the inquiring about your performance means I want to perform better. It's intuitive. Then, yeah, it makes a difference. So hopefully that was a great example, but you get the idea. Develop positive psychological capital. What does that mean, develop positive psychological capital? So I'll say it this way. Do you have an anxious, free presence? When people get around you, do they feel psychologically safe? And do they feel like they can share with you and you're not going to repeat that with other people? Do they feel uplifted and encouraged by you? Psychological capital is a big deal. So think about it that way. Do you make people feel psychologically safe? Some other tactics aimed at building relationships, because building relationships are important. Displaying loyalty, adapt to your boss's communication style, manage your impression. There's a lot to that whole manage your impression. Talking less is good. Asking questions, eye contact, how you dress, even the way that I'm talking to you on Zoom, to be square in the camera and to be looking at the camera is an impression management technique, as opposed to just me slouching and doing this kind of stuff where I'm away from the microphone. And I'd show you some more tactics if I was in person, but these nonverbals are impression management. And coming out on time, a little bit earlier than on time, saying hello to people in the morning. Ask satisfied customers to contact your boss. That's a good one. People will thank you for the work that you did. And if you can say, thank you so much for thanking me, do you mind sending a note to Miss Argules, Chair Lynn, and tell her that you enjoy Claude in the leadership class? Because that would be a better compliment than telling me, hey, professor, I enjoyed your class tonight. You get the idea. So free plug. But the point is that if you receive from a customer that you're doing a good job, and that's awesome, thank you so much, forward that to your boss. Say, hey, I just want to let you know what this awesome customer said. I mean, that's a little bit much to forward it to your boss on behalf of you. You can very well ask the customer to send it directly to your boss. Hey, if you think I'm doing a good job, here's a survey. My boss reads these surveys. It'd be awesome if you could tell them. That's very helpful. Be courteous, pleasant, civil, and positive. Wow. I'm going to read that one more time. And I think we just sit on that for a second. You want to have a strategy or tactic aimed at building relationships with people in your life? Well, be courteous. Hello, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Not, what's up, dude? Nothing. Or just, what's up, dude? And a head nod and out of there. Courteous, pleasant. Pleasant's a fun one. For those of you who have a disagreeable tendency, we need to work on this, because I have somewhat of a disagreeable tendency. Conflict driven, being disagreeable. They say yes, you say no. They say blue, you say red. It's like, come on. if somebody wants to work with you on a project, you're just pleasant. Okay, we can get through that. Civil, treating people with respect. Civility in the workplace. Civility in the workplace is actually a terminology. Sometimes we lose that in this cell phone, social media, Democrat versus Republican world. It's not fun. And be positive. Ask advice. This is a great one. Hey, I was just curious, my boss just gave me this new assignment. I know they gave this assignment to you last quarter. Can you help me with this assignment? I don't know. And that ask advice, by the way, is the same thing I just said about the neighbor. Go ask for eggs. When you ask people for advice, it demonstrates to them that they have advice to give you. So they feel good that you're coming to them for advice, because now they can give it to you and feel good about themselves. Send thank you notes to a large number of people. That's a wonderful one. And it's meaningful and it makes a difference. Handwritten thank you notes would be awesome. Flattery of others sensibly. If I had more time, wish I did. I'd tell some more stories, but it's 9:10. We are at the end. It's inspirational when you reflect on some of these leaders that one might consider to be heroes and think about their lives.